Let's make our way over to Raleigh now here on our Carolina Weather Group round robin as we continue to prepare for the upcoming winter storm impacts. Greg Fishel is with us right now from Raleigh, and Greg, you guys look like you're going to get in on this winter storm action too. What are you forecasting for the Triangle region?
I actually am thinking at this point that the cold air may be deep enough, maybe 2 or 3 thousand feet thick, that we could get primarily sleet here tomorrow night. And then the question for Sunday, which now appears to be the heavier hitting day, looks like the cold air may get shallow enough so that it, becomes more of a freezing rain threat. But those are pretty subtle differences in terms of the depth of the cold air, but they could have major impacts in terms of the the number of power outages, and it looks like there's going to be a wide region that's experiencing this, because you look at the warm nose aloft, it goes all the way up into Virginia, and the surface freezing line may be down toward the coast. So it looks like an immense amount of real estate that could be dealing with sleet and freezing rain for at least the second part of the weekend.
Let me ask you, Greg, because I have a feeling we're going to keep hearing it. And for our audience who hasn't heard the term in a while, can you explain that warm nose situation to us?
Well, and if I could make a little bit of a commentary here, if you'll allow me, I heard a stat earlier this year that we were fourth in numerical weather prediction behind the European, the UK Met, and the Canadian. And I must tell you that this week was an embarrassing week for the GFS and its ensembles. The GFS had no clue earlier in the week that the warm nose was even an issue, and the European was much quicker on that. The timing on the onset of the precipitation, the European never had it coming in before late Saturday. The GFS had it coming in around sunrise. Now it's adjusted to that, and this is a little bit embarrassing, to be honest with you. We've got some great minds in this country, and I think we should be able to do better than being fourth in the world in terms of accuracy. But basically, to answer your question, the warm nose is simply warm air aloft that is riding over top of that cold dome. And in this particular case, it's really high up. It's up and around 6,000 to 7,000 feet. And the problem is then you have the snow falling into that layer and it melts. And then the question is there enough cold air near the ground for it to refreeze, or does it just freeze on contact? And that's really going to be the issue that we'll be addressing here once we get a little bit closer to time.
Let me ask you about the models, because we're coming off that last weekend bust where the models thought we were going to have something, we didn't have anything, and now there's some skepticism from folks who were remembering just 3 or 4 days ago. What is your level of confidence, Greg, on what the models are putting out tonight on this Wednesday for something that's allegedly going to happen starting Saturday?
Right. Well, I mean, I think it's pretty clear to me, anyways, that there's going to be a significant precipitation event, and the big question right now is where do these various boundaries set up? The thing I worry about, to be perfectly honest with you, is there are a lot of people on social media and YouTube, and I don't know what their educational backgrounds are or anything else, but they are showing deterministic model solutions 120 hours, 144 hours, 200 hours out. And it's displayed as if it's gospel. And a lot of the public looks at that and believes it and accepts it and goes into a panic mode. And so I had people coming up to me Monday all day long saying, are we really going to get 18 inches? And I said, hey, if it looks this good 5 days out, what do you think the chances are of it actually being that good when time comes to verify? So, we know the GFS has a cold bias when it comes to this type of thing. And I've seen it happen too many times. And so it's just one of those things where I think you have to be cautious. You have to be honest with people and say, there's uncertainty. Nothing is etched in stone. And we've got to wait till we're closer to time to be able to diagnose it.
At a risk of getting an eye roll from anyone who's watching tonight, you of course seen this photo time and time and time again. So there's no one better to ask than you. Is this going to happen again in Raleigh this weekend, or have we improved ourselves since then?
Well, I think that the thing about that day was that it started around lunch hour, and a lot of people were at work, and they started to panic and got out on the roads and just made a bad situation even worse. I guess the nice thing about this one is that it's coming in over the weekend, but the impacts could obviously linger into the early part of the week in terms of school closings and business closings and church closings and all that kind of stuff. So, but I remember we also had, and you may remember this, the gridlock day where we had 0.7 inches of snow And basically, human activity, everybody panicking, getting out on the roads, turned an innocent powdery snow into a sheet of glass. And so people, it was taking 8 hours to get home from work. There were students and teachers trapped at schools. And we were the laughing stock because all they could hear is zero point 0.7 inches of snow and Raleigh can't handle it, you know. But that was a very unique situation. I talked to a modeler at a conference, and he said that the ground had been, it had been below freezing 2 or 3 days in a row. And he said what happens is the tires, the pressure from the tires melts the snow, and then it immediately refreezes as a result of the cold ground. So everybody getting out of the road actually took a rather innocent powdery snow and turned it into a cataclysmic event. And I don't know that I'll ever see anything like that again.
I hope we don't. Are you in a position where you're putting out snowfall or ice totals tonight? Or if not, when do you think you'll have your first call map?
To be, I would say tomorrow at the absolute earliest, and considering the fact that we're not going to be starting until probably late Saturday, I may wait until Friday on that. And the thing I always worry about is when you draw those lines to separate the zones, somebody lives on that line, and the chance of that line being in exactly that location is fairly small. And so I always worry about somebody, not benefiting from the line shifting 25 or 30 miles, and all of a sudden a foot of snow turns into an inch of rain or something like that. But I would say that certainly by Friday, we're going to have to make some sort of a commitment because people need to plan and prepare.
I mean, if push comes to shove, you just draw the line right down I-85. That works every time, right?
Well, I get your drift.
Is there anything for your region that is real unique in this setup or in previous winter storms that people should keep in the back of their mind if they're watching tonight from the Triangle?
I would say that the thing that fascinates me about this area is that we are right in the middle of the effects of the mountains in terms of trapping the shallow cold air and the warming effects of the Gulf Stream. And trying to predict how far inland that warming effect will get is immensely difficult. I remember one situation in January, I can't remember the year, but I went on the air at 11 o'clock and it was 61 at the Raleigh-Durham airport and 33 at Burlington. And they're not that far apart. Now, I don't expect anything like that this time, but nonetheless, there probably will be some warming. In fact, I think it's already been mentioned on here, the Europeans going bonkers with warming along the coast. And it'll be interesting to see if that actually happens. But I would say that the biggest question in my mind is if there any part of our area that's going to turn over to completely rain. And I think that would be well south and east of Raleigh. But down around Fayetteville and Clinton, it's going to be a close call.
I think the coast is going to be real interesting if anybody can manage to get in on the safe side of this. Greg, I do want to let you know that we got somebody named Renee V715 watching on YouTube tonight. She says, Greg, my favorite weatherman. Miss him here in North Carolina. And then she says, I used to get all my weather from Greg, but she can still get her weather from Greg, right? Where can she find you now?
Yes, I have a Patreon channel. If you go to patreon.com/fishweather, you can sign up. It's $3 a month, so it's not a budget breaker. And people tell me, what do you do on there? And I said, the same thing I did on TV, but I don't have somebody telling me to shut up after 3 minutes.
Yeah, we don't normally keep people to also such a tight time frame tonight, except for when we're trying to book 12 people at a time.
Right.
Before we let you go, Frank Straight on our panel here in Columbia, I think had a comment for you, Frank.
Yeah, just was looking at the surface temperatures up there, and during Sunday night or rather Saturday night into Sunday morning, and I think you have a chance of being right there that that you could end up seeing sleet, not just because the cold air could be deep enough, but also because of how cold it'll be. It looks like your low-level temperatures are somewhere around -7 or 8 Celsius. That's low 20s Fahrenheit. So that's the other thing that matters when you're talking about sleet versus freezing rain is how deep that layer of cold air is near the surface, but also how cold it is. You usually want that 3,000 feet deep to get sleet instead of freezing rain. It may not be quite that deep, but because it's so cold, you may end up with sleet anyway. At least I hope so, because you could, with it being that cold, if it ends up being freezing rain, it would pretty efficiently accrete on surfaces being that cold. if you didn't get sleet. So that's I hope that the sleet situation bails you out up there.
Well, we had a 5-inch sleet storm here in February of '87, and the liquid equivalent
Uh-huh.
was about 1.8, and so you can imagine how dense that sleet was.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, I've seen that before. Growing up in Rock Hill, I don't want to go to a full-on story time with Frank here, James, but we had like a 4 or 5 inch snowstorm, or rather a sleet storm in Rock Hill when I was a kid. The sledding was just outstanding with that.
I bet.
It was great.
We have a whole Greg. We have a whole special open for story time and Frank. It's a whole thing. You'll have to come back for it.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention to Greg, you get the Shirt of the Night award. That's a great shirt. I
Oh,
love it.
I think I bought that in Clearwater, Florida when I was down there. So,
Yeah, that's right.
thank you.
All right. Well, Greg, stay safe, stay warm. I hope people find you over there on Patreon, and I hope people stay tuned tonight as we continue to do our round robin around the Carolinas.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime, come back on a night where there's less chaotic weather, and I want to hear more. I want to hear story time with Greg.
Okay.
All right. Fabulous. Thanks, guys.